Okay.
Hello, my name is Spencer Graves. I'm here with Zac Mueller, who is a journalist with the Institute for Research and Education in Human Rights, and he's been attending the Fish versus Kobach trial that's been taking place in the Robert J. Dole United States Courthouse in Kansas City, Kansas, since the trial began on the 6th of March. So, Zac, what can you tell us about what this trial is all about?
Yeah, so just a quick summary of what's going on in the case is that what's at issue here is a Kansas law that went into effect in 2013 that required documentary proof of citizenship for everyone who was attempting to register to vote for the first time in Kansas. Then in 2016, the ACLU filed a suit against, arguing that the law is a violation of the National Voter Registration Act that sets forth for states to require the minimum amount of information necessary in order to register to vote.
From 1993?
I believe so.
Yes, thank you.
And then so for people should, I think, care about this case because if the ruling in favor of the proof of citizenship law could affect people who lack the documentary proof of citizenship, affect their access to the ballot box. And thus far, already 35,000 Kansans failed to provide that documentary proof of citizenship when they attempted the first time to register to vote in Kansas. It could also make it more difficult for voter registration drives, as most folks don't carry around such documents around them on their person.
Thank you. So, why don't you summarize for just your background and the history of this case a little bit and how you became involved in it?
Yeah, so I've been reporting for a website called irehr.org, is where you can kind of find some summaries of what's been happening day to day in the trial. But so Secretary of State Chris Kobach sought to enact this law based upon a claim that he said that there was a pervasive problem of non-citizens registering to vote and voting in Kansas. And then so in the lead up to the trial, over the last 2 years, he's identified 127 instances of alleged non-citizens attempting to register to vote or getting on the voter registration rolls. But up until this moment, he's failed to produce that is anything more than administrative errors or confusion from non-citizens.
Now, I believe you told me that, let's see, I've heard that he is the only Secretary of State in the nation with the ability to prosecute people for vote fraud, that he has gotten 9 convictions so far since 2012 or whenever he got that authorization, and that 8 of those were like senior citizens who voted in 2 different states and didn't realize that they were violating the law, and only 1 of them was a non-citizen. Is that correct?
So, yeah, so Secretary of State Chris Kobach gets unprecedented power as Secretary of State to pursue cases of election violations. And so, yes, one of those cases he brought forward was for a non-citizen. But after the doggedly pursuing these over the last 2 years, he's put forward a total of 15 cases, but I'm not exactly sure how many have actually got brought to prosecution or not. The 9 you mentioned is probably the right, but yes, yeah, so only one of those cases was part of the proof of, was a non-citizen who successfully registered to vote. Some of the other cases that he's able to prosecute are these other cases of voter fraud, which would be in-person voter fraud or double voting, and then non-citizens voting would be a list of the 3 that he usually goes after.
Right, I heard that not one of the 9 prosecutions, successful prosecutions he's carried on have actually involved anyone for which his documentary proof of citizenship would have actually prevented that, although if this one case that you mentioned may be an exception to that rule. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, so it's a little bit about a question about like timeline, if that would have prevented this one non-citizen from registering to vote. But it seems to be the case that it was just really an act of confusion on the part of the non-citizen and not necessarily an attempt to defraud the election. This one individual was just confused about their ability to be able to vote or not. And then Secretary of State Chris Kobach was alerted to this case because that person then became a naturalized citizen. And when they became a naturalized citizen, they registered to vote, and then they saw the discrepancy.
Okay, so Kobach, so this person became a naturalized citizen, and he was prosecuted for having voted before he became naturalized.
That is my understanding, yes.
Interesting. Now, there's also another, in reading the news reports on Fish versus Kobach, one of the witnesses was a guy named Strickler who had gone to the Department of Motor Vehicles with an envelope of paperwork that included his birth certificate, and he was not allowed to vote either because he didn't show the birth certificate or he showed it and it didn't get recorded. But in any case, the DMV didn't apparently, at least if they didn't see it, it was because they didn't ask for it. Am I right about that?
So yeah, so a lot of what the plaintiffs have put forward is different witnesses who are a party to this case who have lacked some means of the documentary proof of citizenship upon registering to vote. So underneath the National Voter Registration Act is the requirement that states allow people to register at the DMV. So the case that you're speaking about is one witness that said that he went to the DMV, brought a bunch of documents. As we all go to the DMV, we don't know exactly what we got to bring. You got to bring a folder full of stuff. He said he compiled that folder, and looking at it later, he saw that in that folder was his birth certificate. He, on registering at the DMV, apparently didn't complete the process to provide documentary proof of citizenship. Now that might have been from the DMV agent committing an administrative error by failing to ask for that, or typing in a button, or what have you. But what's clear is the case is that even those who have ready access to the documentary proof of citizenship sometimes are not able to provide it, and adds an extra step, is what a lot of what the plaintiffs are arguing here.
Great. So the official name for this case is something like Fish et al. Versus Kobach et al. And Fish is Stephen Wayne Fish, and how did he wind up as the lead plaintiff in this case?
Yeah, so Stephen Fish is, Mr. Fish is just a regular working class Kansan as far as I can tell, and he, after he found out that he was going to be a father, decided it was time for him to go and register to vote. So this was in 2014, and he went to the DMV and thought he was registered to vote. But then a month later, he was notified by mail that he in fact was not fully registered to vote, and he needed to provide a proof that he was in fact a citizen before he would be able to be fully registered. Now, Mr. Fish had moved around several times and had misplaced his birth certificate. And he was born on a military base in Illinois that had since been shuttered and closed. And so Mr. Fish did not know how to go about attaining some of the other material that he would need to provide the proof of citizenship. And so he was unable to successfully register in 2014, and eventually wound up on this case as part of that.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's all for now. This is Spencer Graves for Working Journalist Press interviewing Zac Mueller.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.